Action. All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Acquire and Operate. I'm hanging with not even the guest, the main MC, the main man, Kevin Lewis. How are we doing?
I'm doing great, my man. How are you?
Excellent. I'm excellent. I just treated myself to a turkey avocado bacon, some kind of extraordinarily tasty sandwich with a pickle. My cognition is going to fall off a cliff. So hopefully, all the blood's literally rushing to my stomach. So we better get on with the show. But I treated myself.
Good thing it's only 30.
You know? All right. So we're back. Issue 16, the final cut of this issue. We're going to be wrapping on the portfolio performance, which in our context is a portfolio of one. And just a quick snapshot of where we came from. So we did a deal teardown on that workflow management SaaS for print on demand facilities. This is a little bit of a late cut, but we dove into the buyer journey and mapping the buyer journey as an operating concept, which is one of my all-time favorite episodes. And then we jumped into an OKR teardown, which was a decision-making framework for strategic investments. And now diving into some actual substantive performance here. So let me share my screen. And we will jump in. All right, can you see this okay, Kev?
Yes, sir.
Beauty. All right, so typical rhythm for these, we start with by the numbers, just straight up. And we've started to disclose and look closely at MRR and active subscribers. And this is a cut directly from Stripe Analytics. So for most SaaS firms, you've got one source of revenue and it's payments coming through a payment processor, very likely Stripe. So we get really, really good analytics that way. And one quick disclaimer, if you're contrasting this with the performance portfolio wrap from the last issue, for that issue, we shared the 90-day trailing. And for this cut, we're looking at the specific time period. So in this case, we run on 6-week sprints. Excuse me. So we're looking at July 3rd to August 11th. And we're looking at MRR here and MRR growth. And we're looking at, you can see the comparable period. So it's going to be measured against the prior 6 weeks. And we saw a plus 1.6% lift in MRR, and MRR growth of about $240 on the active subscriber side. July hit hard, man. We had some churn in July that was like, ooh, just, not great, which is interesting because it's peak busy season for our users. And I think there's a lot of theory around, what seasonality means. So I think on one side of the coin, it's that any friction points with a software become acute when you're in the peaks and you're like the prompts there, the motivation. If you think about prompts as information and motivation or attention and motivation, there's some different models. BFOG has a really cool one, but motivation is high when things hurt and you're trying to run a bunch of volume through your system. But on the other side, it's typically not the best time because you're in peak season, right? So for us, July hurt a little bit. So I wasn't thrilled with the active subscriber growth. And on the MRR side, again, we're just starting to get the growth channels rolling. And I think we looked ourselves in the mirror this sprint and identified some root issues and pivoted resources hard and fast towards addressing and solving for some of those root issues, which I'm jazzed for. But I didn't have much commentary, much kind of voice overlay around. And I guess for those that are listening, so July 2nd, we started at about 14.9. give or take, and then we flexed up to 15.6, and then we kind of landed at 15.4 for the month. And MRR net positive month over month. The chart that we look at has because it's a net MRR growth, right? So we've got new subscriptions, new activations, et cetera, which are offset by churn, and so that's in the green as well. But all things considered, I was kind of just like, bleh. Any commentary you want to throw in there?
Not stellar performance. I'm sure there's a variety of reasons we can list, but given the 5 months that we've rolled into kind of spinning this thing up, if it's steady state, even slightly green, I want to say it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no doubt. Cool. Green lights are good. And I think, now we get into the real substance. So obviously at the end of the day, the dollar bills are what make the world go round, and we want to fixate on that and not take our eye off the ball, but we would need to be looking at much more prescriptive data points to jump in. And here I'll zoom in just a little bit fuzzy viewers. So we've got two big charts. K-Lou's the man for all analytics and visibility. So this is glorious visibility. And we've got weekly performance which is a rolling 30-day view. So we can see trend lines week to week in a 30-day view. And then we've got monthly performance on a year-to-date view, which I think is much more useful. Because I think if you look at things on a week over week, confined to a monthly context, you lose sight of like real historical trend lines and where you're going. And so let's jump in. So we look at trial, and this is almost loosely footed like and actually I'll stick with the year-to-date view here. This is loosely footed to our funnel. So at the tippity top, we've got trial signups year over year, followed by new paying users. We look at that as a hard number, and then we look at trial to paid conversions, which is simply trial signups divided by new paying users. And then of course we keep one eye on churn. And then I moved achieved onboarded to the bottom. For all intents and purposes, we're kind of deprecating this metric. I think it was misguided in what our definition of achieved onboarded was, et cetera. And we'll obviously lean into that. But let's start with trial signups. And the headline here, I mean, so we saw a big pop in July, right? I think our base rates in July, it was like we had 10, and again, peak busy season. So I think we had 10 trial signups last year. This year we had 33. And so we've touched on this, but we refreshed the website. The buyer journey is way tighter. The value props, the messaging are much more validated. So that was a nice pop in July. And then and I'll stop bouncing around all over the place, but for our month on month, we saw a 6% bump. So I think, again, green is good. And but I think generally speaking, we're still kind of floating at that trend line of about 34 trial signups per month. So again, it's like a one thumbs up. Let's move on. Nothing really exciting here. Is there anything you would add on the trial signups conversation?
Nothing strong to add right now. All I would say is if that big bump continues over the next few months, especially going into the fall season, we can say at least having an infrastructure and doing things by the book is at least kind of driving that growth. But we need to give it more time before we can validate that.
Totally. And then if we move to new paying users, and let's look at the data, we landed at 2 in July, and we've got 2 on the hook in August. And so, and that's 2 on the hook in August. That's
I'll
newer
take
data
2.
than, yeah. And so what was cool is for new paying users, we had it listed at 3 because it's looking at basically the week ahead, which is a 200% pop. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I think the thing here is when you think about what's going into the fraction, right? It's an improvement of 1 from the comparison period. It's not totally crazy, but it's still, as a percentage, a big pop. And so I'm happy with performance there. Our trial to paid conversion has floated around 8.11%. I would say, or I know for a fact, comparables in Micro SaaS, so call it, as a function of MRR or average revenue per user, we want to see trial to paid conversion float at 20% and above. So we've got our work cut out for us there, but we're still converting new paying users, and things are looking generally good. Like this is kind of a good foundation to build from. Anything I'm going to look at my notes. I'm going to see if I left anything out on new paying users. Anything to jam on there?
I'm excited to see what the offering with the 2 free hours are going to do. That should be a nice little bump.
Totally. And I think so. And we'll get a little bit here now into kind of achieved onboarded, which is if you have trial signups, then a percentage of those achieve onboarded, or your definition of it, they reach the aha moment, they get activated, et cetera. And then and that should improve the percentage of people that then become new paying users. And so I think a theme for us is back to basics. Like I want to get that shit put on a sticker and slap it on everything. And being, just are achieving agreement around root issues. And so for us, we with achieved onboarded, it was like, hey, let's leave the product as is. Let's slap user guides on the interface for new users. Let's, lean on email prompts, and that'll get you far, but I think definitely any savvy product manager would say that that's a Band-Aid fix, that ideally you engineer the user guide out of the product experience with product enhancements and making things more intuitive. So it's very useful for gathering data and understanding and validating assumptions, et cetera. But I think we've come to the point where it's like, we need to refresh the product UI. And I came across
that's a necessary evil.
And it's like, just face the music and stop shying away and trying to get, away with Band-Aid resolutions. Face the music, take your medicine, eat the frog, and get it done. Get it done, God damn it. And so I think that's where we're at now. The one quick line that I thought was pretty funny is the best way to inform a menu is to get in the kitchen with customers. So we're in the kitchen, our sleeves are rolled up. I got spaghetti on my face, and I'm excited to see where we go. Cool. So I think new paying users, we want to see this improve, but we're getting back to basics, and how we're going to do that is with real substantive investments in product, mostly around UX and UI. Feature set wise, it's airtight. We know that because it's a function of retention. We just need to make things a little more intuitive to streamline that onboarding process. And then we're going to get in the kitchen with our customers and execute an offer with 2x free hours of setup guidance, which is more so, and it's a information gathering exercise. Hey, what's your number one objective? Like, what's the number one goal? What's the cool, like, what's the most critical thing that we could set up in this software for you today? And then we go from there. So it's a great data harvesting exercise, and it provides more operating leverage than just the insights you gather, because ideally you're de-risking the likelihood that those users participating in the offer convert to paid. So, and we like operating leverage, which is 1 unit of energy in gives you more than 1 unit of energy out. So we're putting 1 hour in to guide these sessions. Ideally, we're uncovering insights, and we're de-risking and improving the likelihood that they'll convert to paid. So I'm jazzed, but a pretty sweeping change of direction and focus away from what we were doing. And I think the only regret, right, is that, wish we would have had this moment earlier, but that's unfortunately not how the game works.
I think we have to find a better word for regret.
Yeah, something
Nice
just
lesson.
like, man, I wish I would learn sooner and faster. Like, yeah, no kidding,
Right.
dude. So does everybody under the sun. We touched on trial to pay conversion. We're floating at 8.5%. Okay, a good foundation, and doesn't create hesitation to drive more stuff through the funnel so you can learn, or said another way, to burn trial users because you haven't sorted it out yet. So there's kind of an opportunity cost there, but 8.5% is reasonable. So not so much, I guess, a concern for us in this context. Churn. So this was the curveball for me, dude, because we inherited 1.5% churn, which in our category is elite as shit. So,
Yes.
and we're talking micro SaaS, and it's like, if you have 100 customers, you keep 98.5 month over month. And obviously that bucket will continue to deplete. So you need to be replenishing it with new users, and then you start to get to a net kind of user base trajectory. But we actually improved churn, which is, I mean, God, like, I've seen timelines for churn solves that are 1 to 2 years. And they're like, we think we can do a few basis points in 1 to 2 years, and it's going to require 500 grand across product and customer success and all this other stuff. And
we did 15 in 5 months.
And I'm like, damn, okay. And I think this is mostly a function of everything that we put into support, which was a lot of optimization around our tech stack. So we established HubSpot as the core system of record. We've got really good visibility into support tickets now by module, by category. And the best part, and we're huge advocates, obviously, of A, keeping it human, and B, building in public. But at the beginning, there was a ton of resistance, and we had a little bit of hiccups changing environments on the tech stack front. But now all of a sudden you share those insights out with your users, and it's like, yo, this is the critical mass of support tickets. Guess what's number 1 on the product roadmap? Solving for that. And they can start to see how you connect patterns. And it's like, and this would only be possible with a ticketing system where we have analytics and visibility. So now everybody starts to understand, and they're like, what's the method to the madness? And then once you get that buy-in and that conviction from the users, it's on. And then also we refreshed all the support documentation, which was a huge lift.
And to add to that, going back to our buyer journey conversation, this all starts with mapping out your entire journey that all of your users have to take, and just identifying where are your biggest points of leverage. And it's all just listening.
Totally. And we talk about this and it's so funny too. And we've joked about this, but like, everything that are like cliches are cliche because they've existed for so long. And so when you hear it, it sounds so basic that it doesn't land, right? It's like, hey, Kev, listen to your heart. And you're like, yeah, no shit. Listen to your heart. Like, what? That doesn't mean anything. Cool. And then all of a sudden you find out that you've been lying to yourself about something. And it's like, man, I should have listened to my heart. it's like, damn it. They were all right all along. One for us was, your users are your greatest asset. And it's like,
literally,
duh. It's like, obviously.
Survey, support tickets. Okay, what else are they saying? Facebook group. Let's pull all of that into Slack. All right, it's in the CRM. Who's saying what? Let's get Lucky Orange. Record their live. What are we doing? It's like,
totally.
Here's where we should go next.
And obviously you have to blend that in with some other thinking, right? Because, they asked Henry Ford for faster horses. So you got to be careful how much you listen to customers, because you want to really innovate beyond kind of what is iterative innovation. And most times customers can't grasp something that isn't iterative. Said another way, we're riding horses, let's make them faster. And he's like, well, what about a combustion engine that runs on gasoline? And they're like, what?
Oh.
So we don't need like, what do the horses do? He's like, you ride them for fun now. So, all right. So now we'll change gears and let's get into, so that's by the numbers. So we look at MRR, active users, obviously, then we dive into our scorecard, which are the metrics that we're watching like a hawk and that we're associating our activities to. So we can actually foot cause and effect activities and results, et cetera.
Yep.
When we look at through the lens of execution diagnosis, we do so through the lens of our OKRs. And our method includes actually just detailing, I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit, just detailing the OKR itself. And then we give an execution score. An execution score is kind of funny because it's like, yeah, we executed everything well, but we didn't really see what we wanted to see. So that's a funny one. Like, I don't know, maybe that needs some revision, but the execution score is like, hey, did we do what we set out to do? And then ideally, and then from there, so we do the OKR, we lay out the execution score, which is really a function of the reflection diagnosis, which is the next step in our method. And then we do just thoughts for moving forward. So obviously we want to optimize for just being learning machines. And so the first OKR was bolster the support function by implementing and training a proprietary LLM model. The key results were to pick a stack, and the decision point here was really kind of homegrown versus like an assembly of white label tools or just going kind of no code at it. And obviously there's a huge universe of options there. We needed to treat big data sets so that we could train the bot and basically jumpstart the learning process. A lot of that was support tickets, knowledge-based articles, et cetera. And then we want to be systems driven, right? So we needed to integrate these systems of record into the large language model on a go forward basis for like persistent training. There's some different words for it, but basically kind of set it and forget it and make sure that you got all the pipes hooked up to the brain so it learns on a regular basis.
And a little nerdy tip for that part, you don't always have to rely on Zapier nor custom API integrations. Literally everything, let's say HubSpot is a CRM, everything that you set up on the HubSpot CMS, they provide XML links and RSS links. So you can plug that XML right into the white labeled bot, and it will just learn that information over and over periodically.
Beautiful. And so I think reflection diagnosis wise, I mean, I guess we'll see, right? But in terms of like this tech stack, I think we were pretty thrilled with it. I mean, I think our time to activation when this was, in the wild for us internally as a tool was right away. Cost structure was super favorable.
I mean,
this is
the development for homegrown, we would have still been in coding mode right now.
Yeah, totally. So, and I think that's the leverage of just appreciating the context that we exist in, like this period in time. Because I always used to have such, I don't even know, insecurity, I guess, that I can't write code. I can make out some code, I'm like, maybe I should learn. And it's like, well, actually the world has evolved to accommodate you because it's more common that you can't write code. So now there's no code tooling, there's all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, there's a bunch of micro SaaS folks out there that are just building products that are just straight no code, Lego blocks they slap together, and they're getting MVPs in market in 24 hours and first customers in a couple of days. So it's a weird time to be alive.
Right. And that's the shift in the dynamic of the culture. You're gonna have folks like me who just love building cool things and just want to put it out there. Like, look at the whole open source culture. And now for opportunities like this, we can grab something off the shelf and say, hey, let's just customize it a bit and then just test it, validate it, that it's working the way we want. And it's like you said, it's great to be alive in this time. And this is what's going to allow us, technology as a whole. We talk about people, process, tech, and RevOps as a whole. Technology as a whole is really what's going to be that leverage of 1 unit of energy in, multiple units of energy out.
Totally. And I think another thought process too is going like the no code white label way as a way to iterate yourselves. So it's like, hey, we're going to stand this up on the cheap in 24 hours. Let's make sure we're getting the utility that we expected from it. Let's make sure customers are getting better, whatever the use case is, and then go from there. Cool. The only thing, and I thought this was kind of funny because it was like an unspoken thing that we all kind of expected to like validate its usefulness, but we didn't really put like testing in there. It was like stand it up and train it. But when we reflected on it, it was like, yeah, but I wish we would have done more testing. And it's like, well, that wasn't in the OKR, but I think it just speaks to the sentiment that when you're standing up a new tool, a new channel, you want some kind of validation baked in. And we'll get into not including lagging indicators in the same time period that you establish an OKR, because that's misguided. You want to give time to see results, or at least be be reasonable around the timeline to see results and be thoughtful that way, but it's very likely not in the same time period that you stood something up. But I thought it was kind of funny. And I think something that's just food for thought is like when you stand something up, include some kind of validation or something just to build, conviction with the team, get people jazzed that what you're doing is
Yep.
actually working and it's going to be useful. But I don't
Yeah.
think that
Get
was a
through a
factor
few
on the score here.
repetitions. Yeah, no, I don't think that part was a factor on the score, because when we did do the reflection, we did really just set out to set something up. But as you said, get through a few repetitions with what your ideas are, come up with a few prompts, try to figure out, is this at least coming close with a few changes, or is it just crapping out and saying, hey, I can't answer any of your questions?
I am
As
just
long
an
as it's
AI.
not, as long as it's
I
not
cannot
that,
answer that.
you're headed in the right direction. It's just a matter of like, how do we train it better? And then how do we, modify the way we have that conversation better? Because at the end of the day, it's still a brand new technology. You know what I'm
Totally.
saying? As, as,
Yeah.
as much as it's capable of, it's still very brand new. And that back and forth kind of conversation that you have with it, that's part of the learning process. Full stop.
So when I think the holy grail, I think use an LLM as an internal tool is like, yeah, all day. We can use it for we can use it a million different ways. It's going to be
Due
tremendous.
diligence,
Like
code
it's going to
review.
be, yeah, all like the use cases are infinite. Contract, I mean, it just goes on and on. But there's still that thing where it's like, and you're like, okay, like that can't happen with the market. Like that, is this a client
Right.
facing thing? And so I think that's the insight that we're trying to get to is like, hey, can this be a customer facing thing?
Mhm.
And so we're marching right along. In terms of the moving forward, and again, you have to remove subjectivity the best you can. Where it's like, hey, was this a good answer? Yeah, maybe, kind of. And it's like, well, that's not useful. And it's like, so we need to define a spectrum. Bad is I am an AI robot and I'm confused. Good is here's a step-by-step response to the support ticket. Here's the
Yes.
supporting, content. And then you're like, cool, 1 is bad, 4 is great. And if it's in the middle, let's, debate it.
And 4 great would be, I followed those steps and actually got it done.
I got it done. Yeah, 100,000,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I
Link
followed
to
the
the right
guidance.
article.
Yeah, boom, 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 boom. Cool. And then lastly is, and we talk a lot, and I think we don't rise to the level of our goals. I say this all the time. You fall to the level of your systems. And there's a difference. And I think there was some learning that occurred here too around like, there's another term for it, but it's like some goals are lifetime goals. And other goals you can confine to a quarter, and basically any goal
Iterative.
hypothetically is iterative. And so we need to think about, iterating on OKRs where it's like, hey, this kind of thematically is going to be an OKR that is always there. And we're just going to break it up into blocks and kind of cascade or, waterfall towards or culminate towards, build momentum, crescendo, if you will, towards the true outcome. But outside of that, you need to be thinking about a ritual or a system for anything that you want to be persistent. And in our case, it's now moving towards the validation stage, comparing bot and human generated responses so that we can build confidence.
Yep.
Gucci.
Gucci gang.
All right. Objective 2, establish partner channel enablement to generate 10 plus trial signups in August. The key results there were to create and provide relevant assets to support ambassador communication with their networks. Said another way, ambassador enablement for the SaaS OGs. Or just channel enablement, partner enablement. It's all an enablement kind of motion. And then as an extension of that, create and provide collateral and talk tracks to enable ambassadors to position and differentiate our product. And I guess, and one comment there is, that's where I see a lot of ambassador efforts fall short, where it's like, hey, here's stuff to get this out to your network. But inevitably, what does that create? That creates conversations. And then you trust, you can rely on your ambassadors to nail your brand messaging, to differentiate you against specific competitors. That's a lot of risk. So instead, expect that the when they push the tide out, it's going to come back in the form of conversations with people, and you need to equip them with just simple talk tracks. And this is back to kind of sales 101 of just like points of differentiation, why us, a quick breakdown of competitors, pros and cons. And then if we invert this, and inversion, such a beautiful mental model, it's like, maybe just tell them who's a bad fit. It's like, don't just coach them on who not to pitch. And then
Right.
everything else is fair game, and go from there.
I actually like that strategy, because on the who's a good fit, everyone sounds like a good fit on paper.
Yeah. And the tendency is, sell it to everyone. And then what ends up happening is they sell to no one. All right, and then we wanted to secure 3x affiliates, prioritize via performance for comparable vendors. Execution score, we gave ourselves a 3 out of 4. The reflection diagnosis, man, God bless. There were some duh moments, but it's like, it's like, all right, well, I think the first thing was we're going to stand up an ambassador thing and we're going to expect 10 net new trial signups. And it's like, and then you just think about conversions. It's like, okay, like not every ambassador referral is going to convert. So let's just
Right.
say we have a 20% conversion. It's like, all right, we're going to expect 50 ambassador referrals in the same period that we're giving them all this stuff to get it going. And that's going to generate 10 trial signups. So I think that was misguided. And then, oh, by the way, Kev, how do you have visibility, or do you have visibility into the ambassador-led trial referral or trial sign up referrals? And like we got to the end and it was like, oh God, that's like such an obvious reporting gap. So
It was
spend another
like one of those things where like we chose the tool and was like, yeah, this tool can do everything. And we kind of just set it up and then everyone's like, wait. Oh yeah, it doesn't just tell you how many. Huh.
but the thing is, but reversion does tell, and actually back to how we actually report on that, we do, but that's only that's 50% of the surface area, right? Because we're offering
Right.
a rev share, and then we have a legacy referral system built into the product, which provides a discount to whoever uses the link. So, but we still had 50% of the surface area covered. Needless to say, it was 0. So, that is what it is. But that's a good point that you raised, that a lot of the tooling with that stuff, but then it's just about pulling it into, if lighting up the ambassador channel is our number one channel and you want to be very disciplined in standing up channels and sequencing them and getting them really rolling before you move on to the next channel. We need more visibility, and that needs to be on a scorecard, hypothetically, that we're staring at every day.
I was just gonna say that. Let's erect another one on the data box.
And 2 biggest ways to influence behavior: information streams and incentives. And that's for customers, partners, for your team. So again, you want to be super thoughtful with that scorecard because it's going to motivate a lot of thought and energy. So we touched on this. Trial signups is a lagging indicator. So it would have been way smarter to be like, stand up all this ambassador enablement stuff and shoot for 30 social posts or something, and measure the leading indicator, which is them actually acting on the enablement to get the word out. And then think about the actual outcome that you're after, which is trial signups and AKA paid users. Measure that in the next OKR. Again, back to that kind of sentiment that these things are iterative and that they stack together, and ideally you're building momentum. Have we kicked that dead horse to absolute death?
At this point, yeah, the next iteration of this would be after we see what the numbers are doing with the reports. After the next few weeks, if nothing really happens, we'll be kicking ourselves next.
Well, but there's totally, or but I think that's okay. Like we fail forward, but and there's a lot of, we would just have to take a very first principles approach and pick apart our assumptions. Like, this is peak busy season. They're doing their day job right now. They're not open-minded about side hustles in the form of commission schemes and revenue streams. So my hope is that we're coiling the spring with all this education and enablement. And as soon as busy season dies down, it unleashes and we see some pretty explosive growth. But
Q4, baby.
Theories are just that. Objective 3, budget and prioritization of strategic investments for growth phase. So we really leaned into this during the OKR teardown. So I don't want to spend too much time, but the key results were to successfully pivot retainers to project based. As part of our value creation plan, we usually start with an established team on retainer. Everyone's working their ass off. We're doing fix and improve tactics. We have a playbook that's probably 60 or 70% baked in terms of the activities that are involved in fix and improve and what the costs are associated with that. But everybody's doing a bunch of stuff. So we were able to successfully do that. The decision-making framework for strategic spend items, I'm super thrilled about. Man, that sped up decision-making across a whole range of topics. And then lastly was a defined list of strategic spend items, obviously informed via the framework that we just established. And most importantly, a working capital forecast for future investments. We gave ourselves 4 out of 4 stars on this one. Some of the headlines: generated a 50% reduction in cost. My favorite, and I felt like I had my K-Lou wizard hat on. It was like staring at QuickBooks. I was like, this is atrocious. I wasn't happy with my bookkeeper. I'm like looking for an accounting software that with a huge motivating criteria being the analytics it provides. And I had like this aha moment where I was like, dude, QuickBooks is the backbone of every SMB under the sun. And it's like, why haven't they solved for analytics? And then I was like, oh my God, because there's a universe of analytics players that integrate QuickBooks. So they got beat to the market by Point Solutions. And I was like, and we have DataBox and we have our own analytics layer. And literally went into DataBox, there's a whole shitload of QuickBooks templates that are
Library.
turnkey. And I had real-time analytics stood up instantly. And now I stare at it every day. I stare at our P&L. I'm like, where are costs going? Where's income going? Again, back to information streams. And I think the other big one, and this is a really important business concept that we talk a lot about, but it's not the bad decisions that kill you, it's the indecisions. And that's a Jeff Bezos special. And I think there were a couple conversations around personnel fit, performance, execution against KPIs that we had a few times. And that's the marker of indecision. So if you find yourself having the same conversation, you're in kind of a circular thing, you got to make a call. So that's, again, a lot of the learning lessons are hard learning, but or they're just reinforcing what you already know, but at least it brings them into focus. And so for us, back to basics, baby. So everything is I guess vetted via an objective scorecard. Every person on the team has extraordinarily clear KPIs or expectations around the results that we need to see to continue investing in whatever it is. And I think we lost a little bit of rigor with that. Last but not least, yes, this is last. Objective number 4, establish product roadmap to inform investments, fixing versus net new, prioritizing new paid users. The key results that treat into this: identify top 5 features that or modules that need fixing, and we use historical support tickets to find those patterns. Identify top 5 feature requests, same story, and then identify top 5 features to sunset. And this is an interesting one. There was a Instagram used to have a thing. It might have been, I'm not sure if it was Instagram. Anyway, some jumbo tech company where for every feature the product team wanted to add, they had to suggest 2 features to sunset.
Wow.
And
How do you keep that sustainable?
yeah, right. Well, eventually it's more depletive than it's not, but I think it forces decision making, because otherwise the tendency is just add on, then you end up with this bloated feature mess.
Wow.
And like Bruce Lee said, the signal of mastery is reduction or subtraction. It's not addition, right? That simplicity is mastery. So and that's a good marker for improvement over time. Is this getting simpler over time? If it's not, you got to look yourself in the mirror and figure out what's up. But anywho, and then tying this related a little bit to objective 3, but we wanted a decision-making framework for how we invest in product, aka a product roadmap that has quantifiable kind of metrics that then get scored, that then prioritize stuff, so we don't just spin around debating which features we should release. And then we ended up being able to broaden the application of this framework beyond product and start to look at just any investment across the business and size it up relative to the other stuff that's on the table as an option. And then the last thing too, which is interesting, is, well, and I think this is an area where you can be competitive, because let me ask you, Kev, what's the last time you saw a product roadmap from a vendor, from a SaaS firm, from anybody?
Well, I'm on a development space, so last week.
Okay. All right.
But on the front end, in consulting, no. Like if I wasn't building software at this time in the consulting frame, probably like years ago.
Well, or the kiss of, for a savvy SaaS buyer, someone who's bought a bunch of software, they're crystal clear on what they want. They've implemented it. They understand cost of get it going, total cost of ownership, yada, yada. The kiss of death is, what about this? And then the salesperson's like, oh yeah, it's on the roadmap. It's like this, pixie dust thing that doesn't exist anywhere, where there's no accountability to it. And then the buyer just rolls his eyes and says, so you don't have it, and you're probably never gonna have it. And that answer is dog shit.
Yeah, and the saying to that is, on the buying side, we always like to say it's always on the roadmap.
Yeah, everything's on the roadmap. It's on the roadmap, man. It's like, when in doubt, just tell them it's on the road. And that used to be like, there's good memes on, like, it's like, hey, can you do this? It's on the roadmap. What about this? It's on the roadmap. What about this? Oh, we're very, very excited. It's on the roadmap. So I think this is an opportunity to differentiate yourself as an operator, is to be transparent with the roadmap. And a lot of people would say, oh, but your competitors look at it. And I'm like, great. If my competitors are staring at me, they're going to run into something. They need to be staring at their customers. Like, I don't give a shit. Look at it. Like, here's my roadmap, dude. Like, compete. Let's go. And so I think you can differentiate by being transparent. Here is the roadmap. This is the stuff we are going to release. This is the timeline of when you can expect it in market. This is our procedure for testing it and getting feedback from you all. This is what to expect next, because it's just not common. And why not? right? I mean, and that's back to the
And it
ethos
feels
of
good when you hear it.
building.
It feels good.
Yeah, and it keeps everybody accountable because that's the other thing. From the engineers to the design team, it's like, yo, this is the beat. You stare at it, look at it. Where are we on the timeline? Let's go. And it's just a really
One
good
band,
way
one
to
sound.
yeah, to kind of just rally everybody. And I think we gave ourselves a 4 out of 4. I think now the risk shifts towards delivering. So moving forward, it's like, hey, you painted a beautiful picture with this timeline and all this detail and this beautiful introductory paragraph to the roadmap. You better release features like a ninja, and they better be smooth and disruption free, and you better see some exciting adoption, and the feedback better be rabid the whole time. Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
So we got to light up product usage visibility.
No doubt. Yep, I could have definitely thrown that on there. All right, let's now move one abstraction beyond that. So we looked at the numbers, we looked at the scorecard and the metrics that we manage on a daily basis. We looked in the context of our OKRs and we reflected on each. The hope now is to zoom out a little bit and see the patterns and organize them by top learning lessons and wins. What were the wins? Because again, I think, you know, we're in the interest of high morale and people being jazzed about using this to spend their days.
Exactly.
So many objectives are iterative, and we've kind of nailed on that. And ideally, when we hit these top learning lessons, it's like, yeah, they've said that a bunch up until this point, right? So that's just us being pointed about what they are. But objectives are iterative, and so be careful about including when you measure, because all, you know, I guess well done OKRs include a measurability component. But it's like, hey, if you're going to stand up an ambassador program, measure leading indicators in a 6-week time period. Don't measure lagging indicators. That's for the next time period. Like, be reasonable with yourself about the results that you want to see. And
are people jazzed
about
like, this?
Or how do you measure that? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like our goal, I think we got such quick traction, but we could have looked at base rates for, like, as a function of a user base, how many people opt in to an ambassador program? What's the base rate? Cool. Let's try to just get this. Let's meet the base rate for ambassador enrollment. Cool. And then, you know, on the thought process around enablement, let's see utilization of the enablement as a function of, are they blasting this stuff out to their email lists? Are they posting it on social, etc.?
Are there like referral codes or links getting that traffic, you know, things like that?
Totally. Just even traffic to the ambassador sign up page. Like, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. An objective framework for all. So this is a textbook scenario. And I think as operators, there are those times when it's like, hey, it makes sense to slow down so we can do this thing. And if you and I, that's when we get antsy. We're like, no, you don't slow down the train. The train moves. Like, that's the only thing that matters, is keeping the train moving. And it's like, well, if we slow down just a little bit, it's kind of like a step backwards unlocks, you know, a quantum leap forward. And an objective framework for sizing up and making decisions across all aspects of the business nowadays, like, it has radically accelerated our decision making, because now it's like, should we do this or this? It's like, I don't know, let's look at the score, let's break it down. Like, it seems like this one has a bigger reach, but the level of effort, it's going to take way longer to get off the ground. Okay. Like, it even gives you dimensions to actually debate the you know, the usefulness or the validity of an idea.
The Rice framework.
It's savage. I'm all about that. I wish it wasn't named Rice. Like, again, I want to get back to like the you know, I don't know, the Juggernaut framework or some shit. I want to name it something cool. But Rice
Let's not go too
crazy.
Yeah. Remember, simplification.
That's it. We just call it the framework. But Rice is easy, and it tells you what it is. So I guess we'll stick with it. Your users are your greatest asset. And right, we touched on this. Like, this sounds obvious. Every fundamental concept does, but I think it's like, you just reinforce it over time and just stare at it lest you come to forget. And then lastly was that any given OKR likely requires a reporting step so you can measure results. So a good question to ask when you're shaping OKRs is, how do we get visibility into this? Do we have visibility into this? No? Then we need a key result that says visibility into this.
So top 3 questions. Do we have visibility? How do we get visibility? And within what time frame? It's always important to end with the time frame, because as we've learned, if you don't have a frame within a measure that success, it can be 90 days, 180 days. Someone could sign up, left, and never came back. do we still count that person as a brand new trial user? If it's 6 months, probably not, because there's time decay. So
Totally.
always have a time frame for results.
Totally. And that's just ask any productivity whiz under the sun. And it's like, yeah, time box everything, or at least
Yes.
establish some type of expectation or alignment around, the time period. That's very well said. All right, we're gonna bring it home here with top achievements and highlights. It's so funny. I always get a little
The
queasy,
wins.
like I squirm a little bit when I'm like top achievements. I'm like, I don't really want to talk about that, but I think it's important. 50%
For the
reduction.
other guy on the call, it's important for the wins. As your partner in this business, yeah, it's important for us
Yes,
to
it's
celebrate our wins because we work damn hard.
totally. So 50% reduction in costs, and I think because I think this raises the question, like, oh my God, were you spending like animals? And it was not only like, I think the pivot to project base was very thoughtful. Do I think that we were late to make that call? I don't. I think the main thing was, and when you come into something, like, you have to expect that you're going to overspend, and failure costs money. So I came into the
Yeah,
equation with like, hey, here's a oops budget, because this is our first rodeo and we need to be thoughtful about that. But the 50% reduction in costs was a function of a lot of things. It was a pivot to project based, and then it was reallocation towards new priorities. Said another way, pivoting away from optimizing onboarding with user guides and prompts towards product UI UX refreshments. And then I think for
yep,
us too, it was also getting more clear about the real root of operating leverage as a team. And when you are delegating lower level tasks versus entire work streams or entire OKRs, you can recoup, like, the cost models changes, right? So you get operating leverage and you can now be the head on top of the thing, but the cost that it takes to achieve those outcomes changes, because now we're talking about bringing on and delegating low cost activities.
yeah,
So I just left it at 50% reduction in cost, but there was a shitload that went into this, and it was a very nice signal of maturity in what we're doing. So it's like, hey, this fix and improve stage is in the rear view. We've shifted gears here, and now everything is like hard ROI driven, where it's like, we are going to invest this in this, and we need to see this, or else we're going to stop investing in this and we're going to move to another thing, etc. That was
lean
long-winded,
startup.
but anything to add there?
No, listen, this is the lean startup model where we're just going to focus on more outsourcing, and a lot of that strategic thinking. You and I can really pull those levers internally and just kind of plan off some of those things. Let's be as lean as possible. So to your point, we weren't spending excessively. We just figured out ways to be even more stringent about our budget.
15 basis point improvement in churn. Holy shit, radical. We'll take it. And then I think a notable shift in the tone of the Facebook group.
Yes,
Um,
that should have been
and
number
just
one.
now it's like such a positive, constructive, optimistic environment now. It's what it was intended to be, but that was just good to see. The webinar series was kind of sneaky. This wasn't like an explicit OKR. It was kind of an extension of the ambassador engagement, where everyone was like, yo, you guys should do webinars, and I'm in. And it was like, okay. how's the first week of September sound? Outstanding. Let's go. And that just took on a life of its own. And that's another thing too, just kind of listening to your users, listening to the market, and not thinking too much about reacting with stuff that there's no risk of failure. Like, the worst thing that could happen is we spend 4 or 5 hours doing the webinar and 5 people show up. Who cares? Cool. We'll get some
Yeah.
proprietary content from the thing and we'll roll. And then my
The good news
personal,
is we've had more signups.
yeah, there you go. Oh, the good news is it was right. I think directionally we're moving in the right direction. First substantive product roadmap in the firm's history was released into the wild. And the feedback there, folks are jazzed. So those aren't in any particular order, but those were the top achievements highlights. Anything we missed yet?
The one that I'm gonna add, Mad Max.
Okay, yeah. So we got the prop LLM model rolling. Yeah, totally,
at,
100%.
at least got that going, because realistically, that's going to be a major game changer that we just add into our playbook and just replicate over and over for all future ventures. So it's just going to speed up the process to getting in and transforming everything that we need to do.
100%. All right, y'all. That is a wrap on issue 16 and on sprint 4. And man, I think we're super jazzed for the future. Like total clarity and conviction around root issues, reallocating investments into solving for those root issues. A lot of things coming together right? We got the webinar series rolling, our ambassadors are rolling, product enhancements are rolling. And I'm hoping that at the intersection of all that activity that we start to see, again, back to the spring analogy, like we're just coiling the spring. And I just want to see that puppy erupt heading in and out of the fall. So we'll be back with issue 17 next week. Giddy up for the love of the game, eh? Caleb, thank you, brother. Have a good rest of the day, man.
All right, you too, man. Take care.
Cheers.